I get why you don't want to test. When somebody says like, you
Right.
shouldn't test, like, no, I understand, because the number of questions that I have to answer as a result of the levels
Right.
takes up so much more time. But if you are especially consistent, if you say, okay, well, I frequently will test trough, I'm looking for what happens at the bottom end of that curve. I can ask about symptoms. I can ask about how you felt. And sometimes we measure both, right? Or for perimenopausal women, you're measuring at different times. Like, you just create this whole system, but there's nowhere to look it up, right? You really
Right.
have to create this in your own practice. I wanted to touch for a minute too on what I would consider alternative forms of testing. We've been talking about serum testing, blood testing this whole time,
Right.
but there's more. And this is where it gets even more controversial. But what other testing modalities do you like?
So I, again, do all types of testing. So we have 4 basic types of testing that we do in our practice. We do the majority as the serum, which is what we have data about, which we have national labs with national normal ranges. I do some salivary testing, and the premise behind salivary testing is that when you spit in a jar, what you're getting in your saliva is what's called free hormones, because the bound hormones are like the taxi cabs taking the hormones from your ovaries to where it's going to go, right? So the ovaries are producing hormones, testes are producing hormones. It needs to get to the vagina, to the brain, to the bone. And so how does it get there? From a binding protein, right?
Yeah.
But then we talked about this whole free versus bound. So the premise is that when it gets into the acinar cells in the saliva, it's released, and then you have free hormones. Now, in the periphery, we know testosterone turns into estrogen, DHEA turns into estrogen, DHEA turns into testosterone. So there's stuff going on in the periphery that's not
Right.
happening in the blood.
Hmm.
So that'd be like if my 19-year-old daughter goes to the library on a Friday night dressed in sweats, and I think I'm such a great parent because she's leaving on a Friday night and going to study. She goes to a friend's house, pulls out her tank top and miniskirt, a fake ID, and goes clubbing, but I never see it because it doesn't happen in my house, right? So what's happening in the blood, we don't see, but what's happening in the periphery. So I feel like saliva does a good job on measuring that. It's important to see testosterone converting to estrogen. And there's 2 types of estrogen. One's estrone, which wants to stimulate breast growth. So I care about estrone ratios to estradiol.
Mm.
So for saliva, that's what I use. Also, there's a fair amount of data, and this is controversial, whether or not you see a rise in blood levels when you're using a topical hormone. There's a difference between gel and cream. So I feel like this is another way to look at what's happening with topical, right? Urine is what's coming out of the body. So it's like me looking at my receipts. My accountant doesn't care how much in my bank account. He wants to know how much was payroll, how much was advertising, how much is this, the rent. He wants to know how everything was spent. So that's what urine tells us. It looks at the metabolite, but it can be tricky because you're not seeing the big estradiol molecule coming out. It's already been broken down. So like if your net worth, I wouldn't just look at your bank account. I have to look at your bank account, your real estate, your 401k, add it all together, and that's your total net worth.
Hmm.
So when you're looking at urine metabolites, you have to add things together, look at androgen metabolites. We can also look at cortisol. We can look at how your body's breaking things down. It's great for hormones that are in your body. It's debatable how we use it for hormones we're giving. It's great for seeing how you handle it. And then I also do blood spot testing, which is basically the same as a diabetic checking their blood sugar. It's
Hmm.
capillary blood, it's whole blood. So I like to do blood spot testing as well. Nobody really likes to do that as much. Also, the last 3 modalities are not covered by your
Right.
insurance. So it's out of pocket cost.
Right.
So it depends on the patient.
Yeah. So many options. And so when people wonder, gosh, why don't doctors want to talk about hormones?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not easy.
Right.
Right? Putting all this together is definitely not easy. I want to spend the last little bit of time we have talking about potentially other androgens or maybe supplements that go along with this. I'm a big advocate for supplementation, but supplementation as supplemental to primary things like lifestyle and
Right.
hormone optimization. I don't like supplements just for the sake of supplementing. But where do you see this fitting in? Maybe let's start with the other androgens, right? So where does DHEA fit in with this?
So there's actually quite a bit of data on DHEA because there's a commercially available product. And anytime you bring a drug to market, you have to do safety and efficacy studies, right?
Mm.
So they decided there's quite a bit on oral supplementation, and they decided to market it as a vaginal topical, or which is considered a local therapy for
Hmm.
postmenopausal atrophic vaginitis.
Right.
So vaginal dryness. So the same company that did all that did quite a few studies too. And what we know about DHEA is it works through something called endocrinology. And all that means is that it is a prohormone. There's no receptor. It turns into the cell either an estrogen component or a testosterone component. It has its action within the cell, and then it's inactivated and excreted as a metabolite. So that means if I came in here and ate a sandwich, when I walked out, you wouldn't even know that I ate a sandwich because it only happened in here. You'd see the wrapper maybe, but it's not, I'm not going to give someone else, let's say it was a peanut and someone was allergic to it. It's not going to touch anybody else because I consumed it in here, right?
Mhm.
So the safety profile is actually really, really good. Some of the studies as far as efficacy on replacement on DHEA were done of, let's give DHEA to 65-year-old women and see if it helps cognition and mood and libido. They didn't sub-select out, you guys have low DHEA, let's give you DHEA and get it to here
Right.
and see what it did.
Right.
They just gave DHEA. So as you can expect, some people really thought it helped and some didn't. I'm guessing the ones that didn't or had a side effect had normal DHEA
Right.
levels.
Yeah.
So anecdotally, been using that for 20 plus years, and people with low levels feel better, especially if they have autoimmune issues when DHEA is a more optimal level. Inflammation is less, insulin sensitivity is less, energy, stamina. So DHEA is a little bit easier to obtain and a little lower price point
Yeah.
for women. So we end up using that a fair amount as well to try to get testosterone and androgens in the back door.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about detox too, but from a DHEA perspective, I've been using this in clinical practice from a bone health perspective too. And the challenges I have is getting enough to get the effect that I want. So for me, I don't know why they did this, but in the bone health studies, they used big doses,
Yes.
right? So for women, 50 milligrams a day of DHEA, and for men, 100 milligrams a day.
Yeah, which is
So
a lot.
I don't know anybody that can tolerate 100 milligrams of DHEA. 50 milligrams is a maybe, but do you see a lot of side effects with oral DHEA?
So it goes down to that 5-alpha reductase again,
Hmm.
and for the most part, I see it really well tolerated. I might see that there was no effect, they didn't think it helped, but I don't always see a side effect. There's that little subset of people that, again, get acne, feel irritated and agitated,
Hmm.
or feel like they're losing hair, so they don't tolerate a lot of it.
And what do you do? So, I mean, supplement wise, maybe even pharmaceutically, like how can you block that conversion?
Well, I mean, so a lot of it is dose related. I've compounded a lot lower levels of
Mm.
1 milligram. I actually have a patient who's on topical and doesn't have we want to give oral DHA because we want it to be sulfated in the liver, and that's how we track it in the blood.
Mhm.
But I have a patient that's taking a lower dose topically, and she, not for vaginal complaints, for systemic complaints, and
Mhm.
she does better with it topically. So I don't know what it is about that, and being able to compound lower doses, for the most part, people do okay. There are some people that, again, they took it for 5 days, they had X effect,
Yeah.
and now they will not try it again. Also think about, if you said you had to get in shape and I said, "Doug, why don't you run a marathon? So go run 5 miles tomorrow, 10 on Wednesday, and 18 on Saturday." You'd be like, "Well, I have to run 2 first. I don't even run 2." Maybe you
Mhm.
do, but
I don't.
for that first, it's dose related, right? So, like, you wouldn't go out and tell someone, some women might be able to start on 5 milligrams daily.
Mhm.
Some women can't. It has a 36-hour half-life. So you may not even need to dose it every day.
Mm.
So it all depends on all those little nuances. And so find it's pretty well tolerated in my population. And like I said, because it's a lower price point, has that immunity and autoimmune benefits that, I think I probably have more people taking that than testosterone.
Yeah. I think for us too, it's a place to start. I think we definitely fall victim of doing too many things at one time
Yeah.
because we're doing lifestyle and then also supplements and starting estrogen and progesterone. So sometimes we'll start with estrogen and progesterone, and even if they're androgen deficient, consider DHEA as a starting point at a low dose, and then work up, and then eventually move to testosterone if we need to. Are there any other supplements over the counter, particularly, that you think are helpful in this space?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many that can be helpful. I mean, there's your supplements that can help your cardiometabolic issues, your insulin sensitivity, your energy, your adrenal, what we call adaptogens.
Hmm. What
Again,
about androgen specific? Sorry, that was a
yeah, that
broad
was a big
question. If
question.
not, yeah, no,
Androgen specific.
yeah.
Um,
Like, what about some of the things to like help natural production of testosterone? The tongkat,
Yeah, there's the tongkat and there's the maca that people have said. And, as far as a mechanism, I think what those are a little bit of an adaptogen to,
mm,
to help the production of DHEA. There's some studies about arginine. Is that something that helps? It's a building block. It's a amino acid. Is it a protein? Can it help build your testosterone? I haven't really found for just sole testosterone deficiency from aging that there's a supplement that does it. If it's low testosterone, as we talked about from stress, depleting it, yes, I think those supplements are a little bit more likely to work. So, I mean, I don't have like a go-to toolbox for that aside from the DHEA, which is considered a supplement.
Yeah. I've played around with a lot of them. Similarly, I've not found anything to be really effective.
Yeah.
And the literature even supports that. I think the literature in men, is most is in men, but the literature would say, 5 to 10% improvement, which is statistically significant. But for men, if you have a total testosterone of 250 and you improve it by 10%,
Right.
you're still at 275. You're
Yes.
not going to feel any different. So yeah, I think that's a big challenge with the over-the-counter products. And fortunately, we have better tools.
Right.